Hello and welcome to Feeder Fishing with me, Steve Ringer. Right, you've joined me today at Larford Lakes, same venue actually as last month. We're back on the Speci lake, but we're going to be fishing it very differently. I've just finished, in fact, just 4 days ago, it was the Golden Rod Final on here, an event that I was fortunate enough to come second in. It's a 2-day event. You have 1 day on the Speci, 1 day on the Match Lake, and basically you rotated. Well, on day one, I happened to draw Speci Peg 6, which is exactly where I'm sat today. And with the weather being horrific, basically, there was snow on the ground, it was freezing cold wind. It was all about fishing for a bite. And as it happened, I managed 5 bites for £61 and a section win on the first day. And with a section second on second day, I managed second overall and a nice £7,000 payday. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is how you go about fishing for just maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 fish. Because it's not chuck it and chance it like a lot of people think. There's a real art to sort of trying to catch a fish, then catch another one, thinking about what your next move is, just working hard. But maybe not visibly working hard, but working hard in your head, thinking about things, looking for new water, all in a bid to catch that extra fish, which can make all the difference. So that's the plan. Let's see how we get on. Okay, before we start fishing and talk about distances, etc., I'm just going to talk you through bait. Now for carp, it really doesn't get any simpler in the cold. It's all about pellets. Larford has a fishery owned pellet rule, so all I've got is a bag of fishery 2 mils. I mean, to be honest, for this type of fishing, I've already mixed half the bag up in prep, but a bag is enough to do me 2 matches easily. So preparation-wise, a lot of people say to me, how do you prepare your pellets? Well, it couldn't really be any easier. What I will say though is, try and find a method that suits the pellets you use. I know these fishery micros at Larford, they take plenty of water, they're relatively foolproof, so to speak, but some micros can be a little bit tricky. So take on board what I'm going to show you here, but you might have to tweak it a little bit depending on the type of pellet you use. So all I've got is a EVA tub, a strainer, and I've probably got, I don't know, just over a pint of dry micros. Tip them into the strainer like so. Then cold water. Never use hot water. Hot water basically will just turn the pellets to mush and they'll be unusable. What I will say as well is, when I'm preparing my micros, I'll either do them the night before or before I leave the house. This way I have got a little bit of room for error, and also the pellets swell up a little bit bigger. If you're doing them on the bank, there's always the chance you could forget about them and they could get over soaked, or you might have to keep tweaking them all match. Whereas if I've got a long journey, sorry, excuse that bag blown away, then I'll soak them before I leave the house. And like basically if I've got a short journey just up the road, maybe I'll do them the night before. So you can't soak them too far in advance basically, and I think it just makes it easier and it's one less thing to do when you get to your peg. So just going to cover them in cold water. I mean, lake water's fine. I'm happy to use tap water. Some people like, oh, tap water's got this in it, it's got that in it. It's never bothered me, and I've always feel like I've caught plenty of fish as a result. And I'm very much a confidence angler, so if I thought tap water was a negative, I wouldn't use it. So I'm quite happy to use it. So I've covered them in cold water. What I'm going to do now is leave them for probably 45 seconds. Just give them a little stir, just making sure all the pellets are covered. I mean, what I don't want, some will float when you first put the water in. Just knock them down, just give them a bit of a circulation so they're all getting covered in the water. The water's absolutely freezing out the lake, by the way, which shows how hard the fishing's going to be today. You know what I mean? Yes, obviously the sun's been out this morning, but just bear in mind 4 days ago, this place was covered in snow, and that snow water's going to have gone into the lake, which is why today we really are going to be fishing for 1 fish at a time. So that's the pellets soaked. Take them out, just tip the water away. I don't need the water anymore. What I like to do then is give them a shake. It's mainly to stop the ones at the bottom getting crushed, sort of get them a bit of separation. When you first take the water off, they get very compact. So I'm just trying to sort of break them up and stop them sort of getting compacted, which tends to cause ones at the bottom to be really wet and then the ones at the top to be dry. I'm sure you've all noticed that. So then what I'll do, I'll leave them to stand for probably 30 minutes. But once in that period of time, probably after 15 minutes, I'll just come back to them, give them another shake, and I'll just like pick them up and just take the ones off the bottom and put them back to the top. The idea being, again, stop them ones at the bottom getting over soaked, because there's nothing worse than having like half your pellets quite dry so they need tweaking, and then half almost to a mush. So all I'm doing there, just making sure the ones at the bottom come to the top, so they're all getting sort of equal moisture, so to speak. So obviously they're not going to be done while we're filming right now. So in good old Blue Peter fashion, move that back out of the way. These are some I prepared earlier. Just tip that water out of there so I can work in a bigger tub. I mean, I prepared them literally before I left this morning, but say Larford's quite away from me, so they've probably been done over 3 hours ago. But lovely consistency, nice and soaked, basically perfect for use. Now, the fish in here see loads of pellets. I mean, they're used to it's their staple diet, so to speak. But as I said, I'm very much a confidence angler, and I like to feel that my bait's a little bit different, making it stand out from the crowd. You know what I mean? These haven't got, yeah, they've got a bit of a pellety smell, but they're not strong. There's not much for the fish to home in on. But yes, they do know what they are, so they're going to eat them. But just to give them a boost, something I've been doing really well on just lately is the Swim Stim F1 pellet soak. There's two things I like about it. Firstly, it's really sweet, and I think when the weather's cold, sweet is really good. It's the same additive I used at Barston to qualify for the Golden Rod. That was the first time I'd ever used it, and I won the match. And I used it again all weekend on the Golden Rod final, and it certainly didn't do me any harm. The beauty of the pellet soak as well is you can't overdose it. So don't be thinking, oh, one little capful. You know, it's designed so basically if you poured the whole bottle in, or to be honest, you'd be wasting a lot of money, but you can't overdose with it. But the things I like, a really sweet smell, and also it's, if I just pour some into there so you can see, it's like got like a yellow texture, yellow colour, sorry. So it makes the pellets stand out a little bit more visually. So I'm getting two things. Pellets are going to turn a slightly yellow colour. So visually they're offering a bit more in terms of attraction, but also they're giving off a very strong smell, which when the water's coloured, the fish can home in on. So it's the best of both worlds. Amount wise, I've soaked up like just over a pint of dry pellets. So I'm just going to put 3 capfuls in, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm not going to put my hands in because it'll go everywhere. So if I just give them a good shake, now I'll put my hands in and give them a good mix around. Just making sure all the pellets come in contact with some of the liquid. And I can already sort of smell that sweet liquid on them. It's just making your pellets, because it's fishery pellets here, so I've got no variation in what I can use. You know, when the rules are the rules, obviously I'm going to obey the rules. So I just want my pellets to be a little bit different. You know, I mean, if everyone's using the same, where's your advantage? That's the way I look at it, which is where additives come in. Just going to put 1 more cap on, so that'll make 4, just to give them a bit more of a boost still. Like I say, you can put as much in as you want, but obviously it's a false. It's not the case of the more you pour on, the more you catch. So just give them a nice mix around. You can see a few of the pellets are starting to go a little bit yellow as well, so just changing their colour slightly. Still binding well, so they're going to go around the hybrid feeder perfectly, and pretty much they're ready to go. Like you say, you could add the flavour at home while you're soaking them, but personally I find the pellets take the flavour on a lot better once they're already soaked. So you could say, oh, I'll add the pellet to the liquid to the water and soak it into them that way, but for me, once the pellet's soaked, they just take on the liquid a lot better. So that's the way I like to do it. So that's bait, really, really simple. Now we're going to talk tactics. Okay, one of the best tips I can give you for winter or this time of year when you're just coming out the cold and the water temperature's still low is make every cast count. You know what I mean? For me, the lake's empty today. It's quite quiet all week. Most commercials are quiet all week. So when anglers arrive, it scares the fish. So my attitude is I do not want to break the, just drop that bottom. I do not want to break the water before the start. So this is where like measuring sticks come into their own, because it gives me the ability to fish at the distance, to clip up at a distance I want to fish without having to cast out several times. Because if you cast out before the start, doesn't matter what size bomb you use, a bomb crashing into freezing cold water, it's not going to attract fish. You know what I mean? Worst case scenario, it's going to scare them away. It's going to unsettle them. So on Saturday, my first cast of the day was the first cast of the match. As soon as the whistle blew, I'm out there fishing. It's not a case of having 4 chucks at the start to get clipped up. What I did do was, on the Tuesday before, so just over a week ago, I came down and I had a bit of a play around and I worked out roughly that the middle was 60 metres. This then gave me a really good starting point. So I didn't need to cast out and then stick up to work out where the middle was. I came Tuesday with a view to working out distances. So I had Joe Carassi opposite me and Rob Wotton, and I cast out and basically they gave me an idea of what they thought the middle was and what I could get away with. So 60, 62 metres from where I was sat, they felt that was the limit of my swim. Now, what I don't want to be doing at this time of year is starting at the limit of my swim. I need places to go. So what I did on Saturday was I started at 52 metres. In my head, this then gave me probably another 10 metres of water to play with later in the day. What I wanted to be was far enough out to give myself a chance of catching one early, but not so far that maybe I caught one and pushed them out the swim. It's all about in the cold creating what I call safe zones. What I'm looking for, and we'll talk it through obviously once we set on the box, is areas where the fish feel safe, so they've not been cast to. So as the match progresses, all I'm looking at is thinking, no one's cast there, no one's cast there, so there's a chance the fish will be sat there. Because in the winter, fish don't come to you, you have to go to them. So all I've done, I'm just going to stick this up now at 52, because although I'm on my own today and the fish might back off a little bit more, I still think that was a really good starting distance. So the sticks are set at 2 metre intervals, so it's 2, 4, 8, 14, 20, 24, so there's an old clip on. So 52 metres, and that gives me like 8 to 10 metres to play with from the starting point. So it's important for me, there's a temptation obviously to chuck to the limit of your swim because you might think that's the best chance of catching a fish. But what I like to do is go as far as I can, but still leave myself some water for later in the match. So I'm trying to plan my match before it starts. And that's why sticks are so useful, is in they allow me to stick up at exactly the distance I want to start at without breaking the water. Because to me, breaking the water in the cold, it's a recipe for spooking fish. And when you're only fishing for a handful of bites, as I am today, I can't afford to be scaring fish out the swim. So we're sticked up, we're ready to go, we'll get fish in, and then I'll talk to you about the tackle and obviously hook baits and all that sort of thing. So let's take it from there. Right, it's time to make the first cast. First thing I'm looking at, we're clipped up at 52 metres, so I've got a bit of water to play with past it, but also I'm very conscious of angles. I mean, on the match on Saturday, 4 was end peg, so I've got a bit of room to my left and I've got 8 to my right, so I've got room left and right. So the first cast is going to go straight down the middle. Basically going to pick a marker. In this case, there's like the tallest bush sort of the 3 I've got a chance to chuck at, which is the right hand one. But that then gives me, at 52 metres, I've probably got 3 casts. If I get a fish, I can go back to that spot. But if not, I've still got a cast to the left and a cast to the right before I need to move distance-wise. But equally, I would keep an eye on Saturday. I kept an eye on when everyone else is chucking, because that can be a big sort of telltale sign. If I'm chucking 52, maybe they catch a fish at 30, then I will move back. You'd be stupid not to, because location is key. So let's get the first cast done. What I will say is every cast has to count. So like, you can't take 3 casts to get it to the required spot, because those 3 casts, the 2 missed casts are spooking fish. So you've got to be positive in your casting. The other thing is skinny ball. I'm not looking to build a swim. I'm looking to catch a fish. So like, sometimes at Boddington, I'll put a really great big ball around the hybrid. Today, I'm literally looking to cover the feeder. Hook bait's on show, so it's going to come visible nice and fast. I'll talk to you about hook bait colours once we get fish in, etc. But skinny ball, not looking to feed the fish. I'm looking to catch one and then catch another. So first cast needs to be nice and positive. As I said, we're clicked up at 52. So that's perfect. Nicely feathered as well. You do not want to be crashing it in the cold. So I've just feathered it in nice, gone in with a nice plop. And that's something I always look for, is it to go in like plop rather than padoosh. So I'll just adjust that rest. I'm not too bothered about fishing really tight, as in a tight line, but I like to see what's happening. Bear in mind now, this is the first time I broke the water, so there's a chance of line bites. I quite like getting line bites. Some people will tell you, oh, you get line bites, they spook fish, but at least line bites tells me there's something out there. For me, it's very difficult to work anything out when you can't get a sign. So if I get an odd line bite, that's good for me, because it made me think, so if I can't get a fish, I could come back, or at least I've got something to work with. Whereas no signs means you're literally chucking about looking for a needle in a haystack and trying to drop on one. Again, the watch is going to be invaluable. Just starting the stopwatch there. What I found is on Saturday, Bear in mind, it is different. I've got virtually, all right, there's some pleasure anglers at the top of this lake, but I've got virtually the whole lake to it myself, which, to be honest, you might be thinking, well, great, you're going to draw loads of fish, but the water temperature's so low at the minute, I'm not going to be pulling any fish. I've got to find them, and they're going to want to get away from me, which is why I've got to make every cast count. Whereas in a match, when all those feeders land in at the start, or someone next to me's been casting before the off, it's moving the fish around. And when the fish are moving, they'll feed. So if anything, I think today could be much more difficult than it was Saturday. And bear in mind, Saturday, I had 5 bites, 5 hours. So it was hardly sort of frantic stuff. But when 5 bites weigh 61 pounds, you appreciate how important every bite is. So watch is started. We're at 52 metres. The first bite on Saturday came at 7 minutes, which would be, I think, a miracle today, but you never know. But what I will say is, I never had a bite outside 20 minutes on Saturday. So like most of the rest of the bites were between 13 and 17 minutes. So I'm thinking today, first cast half an hour, but after that, maximum 20 minutes while I sort of try and find where the fish are sat. So let's see how it goes. And throughout the session, obviously I'll talk to you about baits, tackle, etc. And we'll just take things from there. Well, it's already panning out a little bit different to Saturday. This has only been out, well, it's been out, as you can see there, 21 minutes. I've had a drop back, and it's a skimmer or a bream, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't catch a single skimmer or bream on Saturday, so it's probably the difference between sitting on your own and obviously there being a match on, but it's a fish. It's probably £1.5, £2. It's not the required species, but in a match situation, at the weekend I was expecting to catch some skimmers, but I can only think, A, the match pressure and the fact it was freezing cold. I mean, the air temperature's higher today, but this fish feels like a block of ice. Just pop him in the net. Has meant the first fish is a skimmer, but it's a fish, like I said. What I'm going to do now, because that was a skimmer and not a carp, and I haven't had a sign of a carp, as in a liner or anything like that, I'm going to chuck to a different spot. You know, it'd been out a good 21 minutes, so long enough for a carp to find it. Skinny ball again. Like I said, you might be thinking, well, he's got 3 feeders on the go. Why is he making it up as he goes along? Well, the reason being, I want my pellets to break down as quick as possible. So I want to make sure my hook bait's free and I'm fishing. If you ever tank test it and you make your feeders up in advance, it slows the breakdown of the pellets down. It's like they get a seal in amongst them. So by making it as I go along, just means my hook bait's free a lot quicker and I'm fishing a lot quicker. What I'm going to do this time, there we go, just feather that in. I've gone left, so I'm still on my 52 metre clip, but my gut instinct tells me, and this is the same on Saturday, the carp were going to be to my left. But I've had the first chuck in front of me, skimmer, or bream, whatever you sort of £1.5, so I'm off the mark, which is good in one way. But the second shot, I've gone left. 'Cause I don't see the point of going back to the same spot where I didn't catch a carp. Yeah, you could say, why don't you go back there and catch a skimmer? But as I'm not looking to build a swim, I'm looking to catch a carp. So I've gone left. I've still got a little bit more room to my left, should I need it. And if this fails, unless I see something to my right, because I never really felt there were many fish to my right. The results indicated the bulk of the fish were to my left from sort of 4 into the empty water. My next cast, I should maybe consider, if I don't get a carp, taking the clip off and going a little bit further. But we'll deal with that sort of as and when it happens. To be honest, although it was a skimmer, I'm quite happy that I've got a fish in the net. I'm just hoping the next pull, providing there is one of course, will be a carp. Well, it seems it's going to be totally different to Saturday because I'm pretty sure we're on just over 12 minutes and this is another bream. I think it's a slightly bigger one. And in a match I wouldn't be unhappy with this, but at the weekend literally I had 5 pulls, 5 carp, whereas this definitely isn't a £10 carp. It feels like maybe a £2 bream. Just have a look. Shot leader's gone through the rings. Yeah. Oh, rubbish bit of netting. Unreal that in the same swim, what, four days previously, I couldn't catch a skimmer or a bream, and yet today, probably two and a quarter that one. I've had 2 in the first 2 casts. Again, I'm not convinced about going back to that spot now, because obviously I've cast there once and I don't believe like there's probably a carp there now because of the disturbance, etc. So I'm going to push it slightly further left again, not by much, probably only like 5 metres to the left of where I've just been, but I still feel that's the way to go. You might be thinking, well, all right, you're not catching carp, so why don't you just settle for the bream? But another thing I noticed when I practiced on the Tuesday, when I was working out where the middle was, etc. Obviously I fished for sort of 5 hours. I never caught a carp, but I did catch like 12 or 14 bream, which was on a peg bit further up. But what was noticeable then was, even with a bream, couldn't catch 2 in the same place. Or to be fair, that's a lie. I could catch 2 in the same place, but you couldn't build a swim. So chucking about, even for the bream, was still a better way of fishing. So let's get this. So I'm going to push it probably another 5 metres to the left. What would be getting towards the boundary, as in where I could chuck in a match situation. Like one thing I did do, because I was very conscious about working my swim, making every cast count, as I've said before the start on Saturday, I went down to the peg either side, just worked out where the boundaries were. You know what I mean? It's really important to do that, because fish will not move to you when it's conditions like this. You've got to find them. So I needed to make sure I knew exactly where my boundaries were, and I could maximise my peg as effectively as possible. So let's reset that watch. Maybe third time lucky will be a carp, but at the end of the day, the water temperature's ridiculous, as in cold. I know the conditions look quite good today, and they are good compared to what they were weekend, but it doesn't mean that the carp are going to be feeding, because the water temperature's still low. So we're in new water again, still at 52 metres, and we're just going to see. You know what I mean? If I get another bream, what I'll probably do is take a couple of metres off and go further and look for a carp, because it's carp I want. But let's see what happens. And you know, I mean, one thing I'm planning ahead. I'm looking at my swim, thinking, still got loads of water to the right. You know, I mean, I haven't even contemplated chucking to the right yet. But as I said, I feel the fish are going to be to my left. I'm sort of 52 metres to the limit of my swim to the left at the minute. So realistically, I think the next step will be to go a little bit further. But if this goes around with a carp, then I'll be going back to that same spot. So let's just wait and see. This is quite unbelievable. Come here to catch carp, and I'm now playing my third bream and 3 chucks, which just goes to show how different every day can be. I think it's another sort of £2 plusser. So in a match situation now, well, providing this doesn't fall off, I'd be moving on to sort of, I don't know, if this is £2.5, sort of £6-7, would only be less than an hour in. So decent enough start, just not quite the desired species. One thing I did notice when I practiced on it as well, when you catch them on the hybrid or the method, and anybody who watched the last EMAG will probably relate to this, they're a better stamp. And that's another sort of £2 plusser. And like, you don't seem to get so many of them sort of 12-ounce pound fish when you catch them on the hybrid. So they're actually well worth catching. And because that bite came the quickest yet, I was going to try going back to that sort of spot, just to see if I pick up another bream straight away. I just felt that was a really good chuck for a carp, because it was pushed to the left, and to the left is where I expect the carp to be. Just amazing how I couldn't catch a skimmer at the weekend, and that really did surprise me, because you'd think, like, fishing down this sort of line all day, eventually you would get one. It's gotten really nice, but I didn't. You know, I mean, to be fair, the lad on the end pegged 4 on Saturday, and peg 8, they both had a couple of skimmers. It's just I didn't get one. I really don't know why, but I wasn't complaining because I had 5 big carp. But just weird how today I've had no indications. But to be fair, other than the bites on Saturday, I think I had one line bite that I thought, oh, could have been a carp. So I only had one other indication other than the bites. So I'm not worried. At the end of the day, it's about, I'm trying to obviously show you how I go about approaching it in winter. And if we end up with a big net of skimmers and maybe a carp or two, it's all about what's catching what's in front of you on the day. And considering the water temperature, 3 fish in 3 chucks, I've got to be happy with that. So I've gone back to the same spot. Let's see what happens is the sort of buzzword at the minute. It's all about this type of fishing, thinking fast and reacting to what's happening. So I've not had a cast without a bite, but I've just not had any indications that there's carp there. And what that does tell me is I haven't gone over a big shoulder carp. I mean, if I'd have gone over a shoulder carp, so they were all sat at 20 metres or 25 metres, I would have had some line bites. That's a fact. So now it's a case of keep picking up skimmers and maybe trying to find the carp. Like I said, I do feel they're to my left, but when I move out, like I said, if I get a chuck without a bite, then it's easy to sort of move out. But I think if I do get a bream again next cast, I'm going to move out anyway, just because I want a carp. In a match situation, maybe I'd stay put, depending on what else has been caught. Like, say this was Saturday and I'm sat here with like 5, 6, 7 pound in the net, no one else has got a fish, then I wouldn't see any need to move because I'm catching skimmers or bream and they're not catching. But in my head, I'd be thinking the carp in this lake can average 10 pound plus. So one fish wipes me out. So carp have always got to be at the forefront of my mind. But see what happens this chuck. My gut instinct is it'll be a bream, so you never know, it might be a carp. But if it is a bream, I think time to move, go a little bit further and try and find those carp, because it's carp I'd like to show you. I think all I can say is 5 in 5. And that's not 5 carp in 5 chucks, it's 5 bream in 5 casts. Good stamp. But I'm going to have a move after this chuck because I really would like to sort of catch a carp. And when that bite time was like 13 minutes, it might be a case of wherever I chuck it, a bream's going to have it. But I'm still casting about and still getting bream. Which, to be honest, that sort of tells me as well that I haven't found any carp yet. Probably the biggest one yet, I don't know, similar sort of size. But, which is even more encouraging me, the fact I don't think I've found any carp to sort of chuck about a bit more. I mean, they're great. In a match, I'd be perfectly happy with this. But obviously, the idea was I wanted to come here to show you how to fish for carp in cold water, and so far I'm putting on an exhibition of bream fishing. But 2.5 pound, and I've sort of got, and I've got more than a carp's worth of bream in the net now. But what I'm going to do, I'm at 52, and I feel like I need to move. You know what I mean? I've caught them bream. I don't think I'm going to catch a carp at 52, so I'm going to re-stick at 55. And you might be thinking, why doesn't he just cast out and peel a bit of line off? Well, the reason I do that, the less casts I have, the better. The more I cast, the less chance I've got of catching a carp. So I'm going to nip off my box, use those sticks, which will probably take 30 seconds max, and I'll be back fishing again. Just moved out. Obviously we started at 52 and I've nipped off my box, as I said, put the sticks on, and 9 minutes it's just pulled forward and dropped back. Not sure what it is. When I first picked up I thought it might be a carp, then I thought it was a bream, and now I don't know. If it's a bream it's a good one, but if it's a carp it's not fighting very hard. So I don't know if it's a small carp. It's got to be a carp. Yeah, it's a carp, I'm sure. It just goes, that 3 metre movement, like literally 5 fish at 52, move 3 metres. And I'm 99% certain now that we're playing the first carp. Interestingly as well, I went back to the original spot straight in front, rather than going left where I expected the fish to be. The reason I did that was just to give myself more extra moves again. Yeah, it's got to be a carp. Not sure how big, whether it's one of Larford's real big ones, but it's definitely not a bream. But it's just a really nice way of sort of proving my point. As in, well, it's not a bad one. Mirror. How important it is, if you're looking for carp, you've got to go to them. There we go. First of hopefully a few. But that just shows how important it is. Let's bring it round this way. To go to them as opposed for waiting for them to come to you. Because literally that's say 9 minutes, having not even seen a sign of a carp, and I've got one. I mean, I shall go back to that spot now. Let's get the hook out, just pop him up. Probably £8, £7-8, which is small for this lake, but still very welcome. But I should go back to that spot now because I have caught a fish, and like I'm a big believer where there's one carp, there's normally two. So go back to that spot, see what happens, and hopefully in maybe 15 minutes time I might be holding carp number 2. I've gone back to that same spot at 55 metres. I think it's gone round on 11 minutes. I don't need to show you the watch every single time, but I'm pretty sure this is a bream. Decent bream, but it doesn't feel like a carp. But I think that goes to show the power of the first cast in an area. You know, I've gone back there for that second chuck, and probably one chuck too many. I think it's a good bream again, but it's just coming in too fast to be a carp. Let's have a look. Yeah, another bream. So what I'm going to do, I mean, the good fish, getting good 2.5 pound. What I'm going to do this chuck is slide it left. So I'm looking for new water. That's the key with this type of fishing. When you're trying to locate carp, is to look for areas where no feeders are landing. The problem I've got today is there's no one on the other bank. I'm convinced if there was someone on the other bank, or if this was a match situation, it'd push the carp around the lake a lot more. But the fact is, no one's going to sit over there with a freezing cold wind in their teeth. So it's a case of making the most of the situation. So I'm going to push that to the left. That's gone in really nice again. Just so I'm probably in bank space, probably 10, 12 metres to the left of where I caught the carp. But you just don't tend to find when it's like this that I'm going to catch multiple fish in the same spot. My gut instinct would be, I chucked out to 55, landed maybe on a small pod of carp, caught one, and it's pushed the others either further across, or it's pushed them left or pushed them right. So now it's a case of trying to find them again. If I'd have gone back there and caught another carp, then obviously I'd have stayed in that spot. My sort of motto is in winter, I'll always clip up, because a lot of people say to me, will you clip up? And yes, I will, but unless I've had a fish in that spot, I won't then go back to that spot on the same clip, because to me it's pointless. The fish will not move to me, so what's the point of chucking down the same hole, catching nothing? I might as well chuck to a new spot and try and find the fish. That's the way I'm always sort of thinking, and I almost look at my swim like it's a grid. So like, I'll be like, right, I haven't chucked there, haven't chucked there, and I'm also conscious of time. So I'm thinking in my head, oh, I need to start that watch, one sec. I'm thinking in my head, where's my last cast, you see, to me should be my furthest one, and into water that's not been fished. I've always got to think that one step ahead. The temptation, you see, is always, well, if I go to the maximum of peg, I might catch one. But if I pace myself and gradually work my way out, instead of catching one, I might catch 3. And that's what it's all about. So, in new water now, I mean, looking at the stopwatch, bite time seems to be anything from like 8 to 13 seems a good time. So, I do believe if I drop on a carp, I'll get a bite inside 15 minutes. So we'll see what happens on that front. One thing I will mention while we're waiting for bites, just hook bait colour. I've got a variety of different wafters on my tray: orange, washed out yellow, fluoro pink, fluoro white. Actually, I've got one tub of 6 mils, but the rest are 10. I mean, Bream Elite a 10 mil wafter, I mean, no problem at all. Yeah, it's a big bait, but decent sized bream have got a good sized mouth, so they'll eat it no problem. As to colour, every water's different. You know, I mean, what I did do here, I spoke to Martin, the bailiff, because I hadn't got a lot of time to practice. So what I've done, spoke to him, I said, any particular colour stand out? He's told me yellow. Well, I came on Tuesday and didn't catch any carp, so I didn't have any sort of, no basis to work from. So come Saturday, I just went with his advice. Started on yellow, I had a 15 pounder straight away, and then I stayed on yellow. The way I look at it is, every cast has to count, and I'll keep saying that. So I haven't got time to chop and change hook baits. I can't have one chuck on orange, one chuck on red, on pink, one chuck on white. I have to go with my strongest option straight away. You know, Martin's the bailiff, he works here. He knows what gets caught here. If he tells me yellow's a good colour, I'm going to go with that. And better still, obviously I had a fish first cast, so it showed it worked. You know, I mean, and for the rest of the match, basically, I chucked a yellow wafter, purely on the basis I've already caught one on it, that ate it. I'm confident that that's the right bait, so stick with it, because confidence is key. You can't chuck out thinking, well, maybe I should have been on this colour, should have been on that colour. You just go with your strongest option straight away and you stick to it. Because in my experience, chopping and changing baits, etc., doesn't work. And I think confidence is key. Moving about works, as in like chucking to new areas, as I'm doing. But actually like chopping and changing hook bait colour, I just don't believe it works. You go with what's your favourite or what you're most confident with, stick to it, and that way you're fishing to your maximum straight away. So, in case you're wondering, that's why I'm fishing yellow. That's why I'm doing it, because I was advised that yellow was a good colour, and my 5 fish on Saturday all fell to yellow, and I've already had one today on it, so it's definitely not wrong. Right, I'm looking actually at my first cast of the day without a bite. All right, most of the time it's been bream, but I did have that one carp. This is the first cast. It's been out. I thought it moved then, but it didn't. 29 minutes now. I'm going to give it till 30. I've made a ball up, ready to go. I don't really want to move just yet, because it's still quite early in the session. Like, as in, when I say move, I mean, say, take another 2 metres off, another 3 metres off. So what I'm going to do, this chuck's gone left, so I'm just going to push one slightly right, I think. I mean, what I did find on Saturday was there was one particular spot where I caught 3 of my fish, and that's the spot I've caught that one carp out of, or the line, shall I say. My marker was the same, so I'm going to push it slightly right of that marker, which will put me just into fresh water, just to see. Because like, I've gone left now, which, to be fair, I thought that was into really good water, and it's not moved, not even a bream's come and picked it up. I think half an hour. From what I saw on Saturday and how it's panning out today, half an hour is too long. You know what I mean? I think 20 minutes was your limit. I just thought it was in really good water, and I haven't had a half an hour chuck yet, mainly because a bream's at it. So what I'm going to do is push this one right. So that's probably only like 2 metres right of where I caught that fish. But it just puts me, if they just backed off to the side, it should put me back in touch with them. Just tighten that up. Let's restart the watch. While we're obviously waiting, because I don't expect to quit, but I'll just talk you through my actual setup. I mean, rod choice, I've set up basically three rods exactly the same, 11-foot SLRs. Now, the beauty of the SLR is I could fish anywhere with that rod, from like really short, as I'll talk to you about later, from like literally 6 metres, 7 metres to 70, 80, 90 metres if I want to, because it's an 11-foot rod with a difference. It's got lots and lots of power. You can see that by the big, got the big K guides. It's just a really, for a venue like this, if you only want to simplify your approach to how many rods you take, then the 11-foot SLR just means I don't have to bring a big rod with me because it covers everything. So that's rod choice. Tip, I've got the 2-ounce white tip in. You know, I mean, I could have put the 1.5 ounce in, but I don't have a problem seeing bites. So, and for me, it casts a little bit better with a 2-ounce white tip. And like I say, when I get a bite, it's either going to be a straight pull or a drop back. So I've got the 2-ounce white tip in. Reels are Castism 2.5 QDA. Mini big pit, basically, which some might say, oh, on an 11-foot rod. But for me, because it's such a powerful 11-foot rod, the Castism just suits it. Castism itself, loaded with 6-pound pulse. I'm not fishing extreme distance. There's nowhere here. All right, later on, I might have to push a bit further across. But I haven't got any like silly chucks, so I don't need like 4-pound or 5-pound main line. Got a 6-pound pulse, and then I've literally got a 10-pound tournament ST shocker. Just as a guide, lengthwise, but I've done like 3.5 arms length. But when I'm in the casting position, I've got 5 or 6 turns of the 10-pound on the reel. You know, what I like is, so I've got a carp on, I want to make sure that shocker's well on the reel. So when I'm about to net it, I've got like that 4 or 5 turns on the reel. So I'm playing it on the 10-pound and not the 6. So that's my terminal setup. Feeder choice. I've kicked off on a 32-gram medium hybrid. Swap the stem for the long X safe. I mean, I like more elastic in the feeder. So when you're playing fish, I just think there's less chance of a hook pull. And when the fish are big and I'm not looking for many bites, avoiding any hook pulls is really important. So 32 grams medium. If I wanted to push a bit further, you know, I mean, later on I might switch to the 42, but at the minute I can hit 55 dead easy with the 32. So hook length 4 inches, 0.19 N gauge. Then I've got a size 10 QM1, and I'm a big hook, but I'm looking to catch big fish, and I really do not believe the bream are hook shy either. Then I've just got the little bayonet, which you can just see the little ring sticking out, just bayoneted it. And you might notice already, and this is something I first shown you at Boddington in one of the earlier editions of the EMAG, it's got the tub of water by the side of me. All I'm doing is I've got that bayonet tied in a little tiny loop. The reason I've got that, it gives the bayonet a bit of movement. So when I'm looking at that in the bait tub now, I've got the hook lying flat and the wafters sitting up. So rather than everything lying flat, as is the case with a conventional hair, by putting the bayonet in a little loop, it gives it movement, so it pivots. So at the minute I've got size 10 line, lovely and flat, that wafter just sitting up. So if you imagine on the bottom, you've got your pellets come off your feeder, dissolved around the feeder, that wafter's always sitting just slightly above them. So it's the first thing a fish sees when it approaches the actual pile of bait. I just feel it gives me an edge, you know what I mean? And I think if the hook bait sits up slightly, hook's still laying flat, so hook holds are still going to be good, but it just gives me a little edge, and I think it allows me to fish wafters how they should be fished, so to speak. So that's why, if you ever watch me, I always have that tub of water by the side. I'm just testing it sitting right. I mean, there's always a little bit of variation, so I'm just checking that when I drop it in that tub, wafter's sitting up, hook sitting flat, and that for me is the perfect presentation. So that's been out 4 minutes. I reckon we're probably still 4 minutes from a possible bite. So hopefully you'll join me again in 4 minutes time with a great big carp on the end. We shall see. Well, the last sort of, I don't know, 45 minutes, hour, a couple more bream, but don't really feel like I'm getting close to getting another carp. I mean, I'm still working the swim, looking for new water, but I just think that water temperature is so low, and I think the problem I've got is the lake's pretty much empty, so those fish can be backed right off to the other bank, could have backed off left, they could have gone right, and like basically they don't want to feed, the water's freezing, so they don't want to come back to me. That said, if we're in a 5-hour match, we've still got 2 hours to go, so what I'm thinking is in about 20 minutes time, I want to give myself a chance to catch some fish short, or catch a fish short, or just to see what a resting line almost. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put 3 big feeders in short with mainly cord. When I say short, there's 2 options. Like on Saturday, a few fish got caught like down the edge, particularly on the match lake behind me, but it's so cold, that water now. And obviously there's quite a bit of disturbance because we're filming on the bank. I don't realistically see a carp coming off the edge of the platform. So I think instead, I'm going to clip a baiting up feeder on one of my spare rods, and I'm going to stick it at like 8 metres. Going to put so it's bottom of that near shelf, which has always been a good area on Speci. So it's into the deep water. So if a carp does want to feed, it hasn't got to come into shallow water to do it. Then I'm going to put 3 feeders in and then leave it sort of half hour to settle. And then I've got somewhere to drop in the last hour. I did do this at the weekend. I did it on Saturday, and I was just about to go on it with 30 minutes to go, thinking I was desperate for another carp. When out of the blue, it went round and I got one. And then I looked at my watch and I thought, 20 minutes to go, what do I do? And because I'd just caught one, I went back to the same spot, didn't get one. But as it happened, I didn't need another one. So I never got to drop on it. You know what I mean? No one else around me really fed it. So I never really got an idea whether it would have produced a fish or not. But I don't see any harm in doing it. You know what I mean? And like a lot of fish on the other bank Saturday did get caught late, like, and quite short. So I think another 15 minutes, I'll put 3 in, then probably let it settle for half an hour and then have a look over it. Because even when the water's really cold, there's always a chance a fish will want to feed over some bait late on. So I think that's the best plan of attack. And the carp in here are so big that 2 late bites could be 25, 30 pounds. So we're going to do that. This one's already been out 24 minutes. The interesting thing is, basically when I've gone left, I just really haven't had much response at all, which is where I expect the carp to be. But when I've gone right, or like sort of straight-ish, I've pretty much had a skim or a bream every cast, but only that one carp. So I'm not quite sure why. I'm not sure whether it's because obviously there's carp to the left, but they're not feeding. They literally just lay there motionless. Or I'm not sure whether there's literally nothing to the left and you can't catch what's not there. But it's just been so defined that when I've gone slightly right or straight in front, I've had a bream basically every single cast. Oh, don't get me wrong, I've had to wait for them. It's not been rapid. But when I've gone left, like this chuck's gone left, and the 2 chucks I've had without a bite at all have been on to the left, which is bizarre. I'm surprised I've not picked up a carp to the left, but I just think this is the peril of sitting on your own on a big lake like the Speci when the water temperature's really low and those fish do not want to feed, as in they don't want to come to me. So that's what I'm thinking, but still plenty of time. You know what I mean? In a match situation, I wouldn't be worried. I should say on Saturday, 70% of the carp that got caught in the last hour. So plenty of time to go, and I'm still confident. I've still got room in this still got room long as well to work. Like I say, I've still got another 3-4 metres before I even hit the middle. So plenty of scope to catch, but I'm a little bit disappointed I've not had another carp, but I'm putting it down to the fact that water temperature is ridiculously low and I'm sat on my own. So that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. I've just had that one more chuck before I was going to bait the short line, and on 15 minutes it's all dropped back. I thought it was a carp when I first picked up, but I'm not so sure now. The bite didn't suggest it was a carp, and the way it's coming in doesn't suggest it's a carp either. I want it to pull back, but it doesn't really seem to be able to. No, I think it's a bream. So what I'm going to do is hopefully land this. Yeah, just quite a big bream for Larford standards. Hopefully land it. Well, I've landed this, pop him in the net. And what I've done while you've not been watching is quite an old warrior, that one, but £3. Again, that was slightly back to the right where I've had the sort of bream bites. So what I'm going to do now, rather than go straight back out, just hook that loop over the handle. Just put some bait in. So I've clipped this rod up at 8 metres. What I've got is what's called like a cap baiting up feeder. It's got no weight on it. All the weight's going to be in the bait itself. Now, one thing I didn't mention, obviously, golden rod final, for those that don't know, it's feeder only. You can't, I can't throw bait in, I can't catapult bait in. So all the bait has to go through the feeder. So that's why I'm looking, they do a bigger size than this, but it's freezing cold. I don't need to put loads and loads of bait out. So it's got a cap at the top. And what that allows me to do is fill it with corn. Corn's always been a great bait at Larford. Then just take some micros and just cap it like so. If you look at it there, so it's like, don't know, 3/4 corn, 1/4 micros just to cap it. It just allows me to feed a lot. If I don't want to feed ground bait or a lot of pellets, I can get a lot of corn in without having to feed a lot of the other baits. So all I'm going to do is put 3 of them in, let's say at 8 metres, just waiting for it to hit bottom. Empty, really nice and clean as well. So literally fill it up with corn. They're just great feeders for introducing a lot of particles. You can put hard pellets in them. I can put corn. I could even put meat in if it was warmer, or hemp, any baits like that. It's quite hard to chuck 8 metres. Just to be nice and smooth. I could do it underarm. What I'm going to do is let the first 2 hit the bottom. That's just here. And the last one, I'm going to empty halfway down just to get a bit of spread. So I'm not leaving like 2, 3 piles of bait. I'm getting quite a nice spread. You know what I mean? I reckon 3 feeders is virtually half a tin. So this one I'm going to empty just really smooth and really gentle. So let it hit, go 1, 2, and just literally jerk it out emptied. So that corn now will be falling. So I'll just get a better spread. So if a couple of carp do come along, there's not just like 3 little piles of bait, there's a reasonable spread of bait. So I'm going to give that, and what I did on the Saturday was I put that in with 1.5 hours to go. As it happened, I never dropped on it, as I said, but today I'm going to give it half an hour, and then I'm going to drop on it just to see. I want to give it half an hour to settle. There doesn't seem any point literally going straight on it, but in that last hour of the match, sometimes, even when it's been rock hard, there's a fish or 2 looking for bait. So by putting a bit in on that line, if there are a few fish that want to feed, I've got every chance of catching them. And because I can't throw bait in, obviously I couldn't at the weekend, everything goes through the feeder. Those cap feeders are really, really nice for that. Because it means I don't have to feed a lot of bait I don't want to, just to get it out there. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do this chut, just to see. Try a little bit of goo. So I've loaded the hybrid and just a blob of pineapple. If you can just see it there on the outside of the feeder. Sometimes, I don't know, goo can be a great impact. And if there's fish sitting off bottom, it will help drag them down. So it's worth a try. You know, I mean, I always have a tub with me purely for the fact, as an impact, it can be really, really good. Like I said, I'm not catching carp at the minute. Yeah, I'm still getting bream, but I would like to catch a couple more carp before the end of the session. So we're trying the go. You never know, as they say. Right, I went out on the go, and unbelievably, it's gone round within 6 minutes. I'm not sure whether it's got to be a carp, which is just like unbelievable considering all the things I've tried. And then just happened to be like, I just noticed it on my tray, tiny blob of goo, and 6 minutes and it's carp. The only thing I'm thinking is the water is quite coloured. So maybe like that goo's just given a little bit of a scent trail and help this fish to find it. I'm sure it's a carp. I don't think it's a big one, but it's one I feel like I've worked really hard for. Oh, it's not a bad one. decent common. There we go. Just amazing that whether it was the goo or just a total coincidence, we'll never know, but the goo certainly didn't do any harm. It's a real weird looking one, shall we say. Probably £8, but got the body of a 4-pounder. Let's drop him in the net and see. You never know, that goo might catch me another. Back out, obviously on the go, and it's gone round again on 7 minutes, and this time it's not a carp. I'm pretty sure it's another. Sorry, I just nodded its head then. Yeah, it's another bream. And although bream aren't obviously what I've come for, when I look at it, I've probably got 2 carp for 16 and at least £20 of bream now. So in a match situation, you'd be more than happy with that. It's just not quite panned out how I expected it to. And that's another sort of another £2 in the net. What I'm going to do, I'm going to push this cast left because I want to catch another carp. And I think the best chance is still to the left because there's too many bream sort of on that straight line. I'm going to have a 20-minute chuck there, and then, unless I catch a carp there, I'm going to drop, that'll leave me with about an hour to go, and I'm going to drop it on that short line. Now I've just had that carp, I do fancy a bite on that short line, which might prove false optimism, but you never know. I mean, just a little tiny, I'm going to stick with the goo because it caught me that carp. You don't need a lot, I will say that. I'm only putting a tiny amount on. But let's push this left again. Just feel as though there should be carp to the left. Purely basing it obviously on the weekend's results. And the fact when I've gone left, I have caught less bream. So like that makes me think maybe there's carp there and that's why there's not bream. The other thing is like, I'm at, what am I at, 58 now, so realistically I've got one more move in me, so like with an hour to go I should drop it on that short line with an hour to go. If I get one, great, hopefully maybe even finish the session on that. If I don't get a sign inside 10 minutes, then what I should do, I think, is unclip this rod, take it out to sort of 61, 62, which is pretty much the max, and then I've probably got 2 chucks left. You know what I mean? And at the best time of day, in totally new water. So realistically, there's a good chance I can nick that 1 carp, which I'm looking for now for what I'd consider a pretty good day considering the conditions. So we can but see how it pans out. I'm just going to nip up now. I'm going to clip my spare rod up at, I've baited at 8 metres, but I'm going to clip it up at 9. I just like to fish just past the bait. A, because I'll get a liner if there's a big carp feeding on the bait. B, sometimes I feel, even when fish don't want to feed, they'll come to the bait but sit off the back of it. So I'm going to leave this out here, you know, when the bites are hardly pulling the rod in. And then I'm going to clip that rod up at 9 metres. So it's fishing just past where I'll put that bait. And then with dead on an hour to go, which is just under 20 minutes away, I'm going to drop on that line, give it 10 minutes. I don't see any point giving it longer than 10 minutes. Purely for the fact that if there's one there, I'd expect an indication or to catch it pretty quick. So that'll be my theory anyway. Hopefully it'll go round and I can stay on it and I might need to top it up. But just the way the session's progressed, I would like to have that 1 chuck, at least 1 chuck on my maximum distance, just to see whether there's still a carp to be caught in the middle. So let's see how it pans out. Sliding it left, safe to say, hasn't worked. It hasn't worked all day. I've basically managed, looking for new water's worked, but all the fish just seem to have been to the right. But if I've kept fishing the right, it's killed it. So this has been out 20 minutes and it's not even looked like moving. I still maintain there is carp to my left, but whether they're just not feeding, it's too cold, I don't know. So What I'm going to do, I'm going to have this out, but before I do, I'm going to take 4 metres off. So the last chuck in, if I need to go back to it, will be into 4 metres of fresh water. Rather than re-sticking it now, I know that from the line clip to the first ring, it's basically 50 centimetres. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically, I just took 4 metres off the clip. So when I go back on it, I can be on my longest chuck of the day, totally new water, and hopefully a realistic chance of a late fish. But all really depends now what happens when I drop on this short line, if anything. My gut instinct is the way the day's gone, I'll probably get a bream, but we shall see. If you don't try, you don't know. And I was left on Saturday feeling like, when I didn't get a fish in the last 20 minutes, had I dropped it short, would I have got one? So I've clipped this up at, like I said, 9 metres. Just made a ball up just before I reeled in. Cap on. I think I'm gonna underarm it. There we go. Feel it down. It's on the bottom. What I'm gonna do, as I say, I've clipped it up at 9 metres. I'm just gonna take the clip off. Now, that's off. Just in case, obviously if I do hook a big carp, I don't want to be clipped up that close in. So I've took it off, and what I'll do if I don't get a bite, I'll put it on again just before I reel in to save re-clipping. But because I'm only fishing in my head now, I'm thinking one bite on this line could be massive. Don't want to lose it getting broke on the clip. And if I do hook one, quite happy to take 30 seconds to get off my box and re-clip. But so I've took the clip off, could line marker it if I thought I was going to get several fish. I think I'd put a line marker on so I could just unclip it, mark it, etc. And so I didn't have to get off my box. But in my heart of hearts, I do think catching the carp here is going to be a real bonus considering how cold it is. So if I get one, I'll quite happily walk up the bank, re-stick it and get back on that spot. So I'd expect, I keep forgetting to start the watch. I'm going to give it 10 minutes maximum. I just think 10 minutes is more than enough. If there's a carp there, I will know about it in 10 minutes. Either by the foot, maybe a line bite, or hopefully the rod getting pulled in. But if I haven't had a line bite or an indication in 10 minutes, I do not see the point of sitting there any longer. I'd rather go back out and maybe look to come back onto this line for the last 10 minutes if I'm really looking for a fish. But I don't think it's not the sort of line where I'd expect to bore one on. I've put some bait there, I've laid a trap, drop on the trap, indication or bite, stick on it. No bite, then I won't be giving it long. Back out to the middle, because I still think when it's hard, the middle line is my banker, and I've still got that last bit of new water to try before I'm sort of over the middle, so to speak. So we can but try. I was half hoping to get a indication straight away, but it hasn't moved. Sometimes if there's one there, it will go literally, or I'll get a liner within seconds, but it ends up I'm fishing just past the bait. If there is a carp mooching around, then I should get an indication or a bite, so fingers crossed. Well, well, it's a fish on the short line. It's the smallest skimmer of the day. And to be honest, like, the only thing I say is proof small fish eat big baits, because it's got that 10mm wafter. But it's the smallest skimmer of the day, and it took 5.5 minutes to catch that. Realistically, there was no indications before it. My honest opinion is I don't believe there's a carp there at the minute, so I know it's only been 5 minutes and I did catch a fish, but it wasn't the intended fish. So I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble and go back to that, go to 62 metres, because I haven't shot there all day, and I just didn't, that skimmer sort of dampened my enthusiasm for the short line. Ended up, there'll still be some bait there, so it's still an option, but I do think if there'd been a carp there, A, I probably wouldn't have caught that little skimmer, and B, I would have had an indication from it, and I didn't get one. So Put a tiny blob of goo on again. I'm going to go back out, go out to 62. I'm going to push it right, because at the end of the day, a bream is better than nothing. I mean, they're all weight builders at the end of the day. So 20-minute shut there, and then we'll probably have just under half an hour to go, and we're in the last chance saloon, realistically. But I still think there's a realistic chance of one more carp, which for me would make it a pretty decent session in what might not look it, but I don't think conditions get much tougher than this. I don't believe the water temperature can get any lower without it being frozen. So one more carp would give me, so I've probably got 16, probably got 40 pound now. One more carp gives me 50 pound, which when the water temperature is low as this, I don't think you can be disappointed with. So I've said fingers crossed, but they really are crossed this time. As you can see by the fact I've got my hood up, the temperature in the last sort of 20 minutes has really dropped, and it's absolutely freezing. I went back long, and I've just thought, I don't know, in my head I just couldn't see a fish coming short. I set it up nice, but I just couldn't see there was a bite there, so I thought I'm going to leave it down the middle, and it's been out just over 30 minutes when it went. Just out the blue, lovely and slow, which tells you how cold the water is. I will take my hood down for this fish, but I just feel like this last 20 minutes, the temperature has plummeted, and so the chances of any fish, and then out the blue, like I said, but it sort of backs up my point again as well. First chuck into new water. That first chuck is just so important, and sometimes when it's really hard, yes, I've talked about not leaving it too long because you're trying to find one, but at the right time of the day, if you're in your best spot, there's an argument for saying, basically, you're fishing, everything's right, just wait for one to find it, and that's exactly what I've just done. Don't get me wrong, I was starting to think it wasn't happening. It's another, probably, I don't know, 6-7 pound. And I think the fact that I've caught 3 fish, at the weekend I caught 5 for 51, 5 for 61, and today I've probably caught 3 for 20. And I always think when it's really cold and that water temperature is low, then big fish don't feed. And I think that's one of the reasons today the 3 carp I've caught, probably 5 and a bit, are on the small side for the Speci. So I'm going to pop him in the net. I'm not going to have another chuck. As I said, it's getting really, really cold. And we've done a full 5 hours. I've probably got, I reckon, 50 pound, which, all things considering, I think it's a great result. So I'll pop him in the keep net and we'll have a look at the catch. So there you have it. I reckon 3 nice carp, not big by specimen lake standards, but 3 for probably just over 20 pound. I reckon close to 30 pound a skimmer. So 50 pound on a day when the water's like liquid ice, I don't think is to be sneezed at. And hopefully you picked up a few tips. I mean, it's been interesting fishing. As I said, very different to last Saturday, but still rewarding all the same. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next month.